What would you do if the person you trusted most turned your absence into an opportunity to erase you from your own life? It's a question I never thought I'd have to ask myself, until the moment it happened. I was stationed at a remote humanitarian outpost in the southern Philippines, part of a Navy medical unit offering emergency aid after a devastating typhoon. It was hot, dense, the kind of heat that clings to your skin and makes even your thoughts feel heavy. The day had been long, treating infected wounds, delivering supplies, calming terrified villagers. I returned to our tent, drained but steady, expecting nothing more than a quick message from home. I hadn't spoken to Samantha in 3 days, which wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the subject line waiting for me in my inbox. Let's do this the right way. I opened it. 4 sentences. That's all it took to gut 12 years of marriage. She'd filed for divorce. She'd emptied all our joint accounts. She was moving Ryan, a man she swore was just a coworker, into our home. I hope you understand, she wrote, as if betrayal could be softened by a passive tone and polite punctuation. My name is Daniel Brooks. I'm 44 years old. I've served in trauma zones across the globe, stitched children back together after bombings, reset broken bones in floodwaters, and held men's hands as they took their final breaths. I've seen things I wouldn't wish on anyone, but nothing had prepared me for this kind of betrayal. Not from a stranger. From the woman I thought would be there when the dust settled, the deployments ended, and real life began. I closed the laptop, said nothing to my team, took a cold shower in the communal stall, and stared at the cracked mirror. When I got back to my cot, I typed a single word in response. Understood. That was it. No pleading, no accusations, no reaction. That's not who I am. But something inside me, something steady and trained, took over. I didn't feel rage, I didn't cry, I planned. Because Samantha forgot one thing. I wasn't just a medic. I was a tactician. And I never start fights. But I do finish them, if you've ever been blindsided, if you've ever felt the sting of betrayal from someone you trusted completely, stay with me. What you're about to hear isn't just a story of divorce. It's a lesson in resilience, in strategy, and in the quiet kind of justice that doesn't need to shout. Leave a comment if you've ever had to rebuild from the ashes, and if this story hits close to home, share it. You never know who else needs to hear that they're not alone. 6 months before that email, I started noticing changes. Not the kind that crash into your life like a car accident, but the subtle, creeping kind. Like water slowly rotting the beams beneath a floor you thought was solid. Samantha used to call me every night when I was away on missions, even if it was just to hear me breathe. But one evening, her tone changed. Flat, distracted. Sorry, it's been a long day, she said, then hung up early. I didn't think much of it then. Everyone has off days, but the next call came 2 days later, then 4, then not at all. She started working late. At least that's what she told me. Her texts were shorter, her photos less frequent. She joined a new fitness studio downtown, started posting filtered mirror selfies in expensive leggings, outfits I'd never seen her wear. A new group of friends appeared on her social media, people I didn't recognize, places we'd never gone together. Every time I asked how she was, she'd smile through the screen and say, "Just tired, babe, nothing's wrong." But it was already slipping. I could feel it, like holding warm sand in your hands. No matter how tightly you clench, it still slides through. I'm not the jealous type, never have been. I believed in giving her space and trusting that our bond, built over 12 years of laughter, hardship, and long-distance calls, was stronger than distance. But trust doesn't mean blindness, and love, real love, doesn't ignore instinct. So I started taking quiet steps. Not because I was certain she was cheating, but because something didn't sit right in my gut. And I've learned to trust my gut in life or death situations. This wasn't war, but it felt like something was being taken from me without a sound. I rented a storage unit on the edge of town using a fake business name to avoid a paper trail. Into it I moved a few things she never paid attention to. My father's medals from Vietnam, a box of handwritten letters from my mother, my original deed to the farm I'd inherited years before, and the antique watch I wore on our wedding day. I also printed hard copies of important documents, birth certificate, VA loan paperwork, military pension records. I didn't know why. I just knew I had to. Next, I opened a second bank account at a credit union we'd never used. I started splitting my paychecks, small amounts just enough to build a quiet cushion. I left the bulk of the funds in our joint account to avoid suspicion, but diverted enough so that if something went wrong, I wouldn't be starting from nothing. I told no one, not even my best friend from the Navy, because even saying it out loud would make it real, and I wasn't ready to face what I was suspecting, not yet. Then one night, about a week before my deployment, I caught her smiling at her phone while we were in bed. A soft, lingering kind of smile. I asked her who she was talking to. "Melissa," she said, referring to one of her new friends. "We're planning a girls' weekend." I nodded and said nothing, but the next day when I picked up her phone by mistake, same model, same case, I noticed the passcode had changed. It used to be our wedding date. Now it was something else. She brushed it off. "Work requires extra security now," she said. I didn't argue, just stored the detail away. The day I left, she hugged me at the airport, tight but brief. "Be safe, okay?" she said without looking me in the eyes. Her voice was even, practiced, like a barista repeating a customer's name. I boarded that plane with 1,000 thoughts swirling through my head, but none of them prepared me for what she would do once I was gone. Still, deep down, some part of me already knew. I didn't want to believe it, but I'd already begun, preparing for the moment the ground would give out beneath me. That's the thing about betrayal. It's rarely a thunderclap. It's usually a slow drift, a shadow that grows while you look away. And as I flew toward the other side of the world, Samantha was already erasing me from the life we'd built together, brick by brick, dollar by dollar. And all I had left now was instinct, strategy, and time. We met the way some stories are supposed to begin, by accident and at the exact wrong time. It was 12 years ago, at a fundraiser for a local children's hospital. I had just come back from a 9-month rotation in Syria and wasn't in the mood for mingling or meaningless chatter. But she was different. Samantha wore this sharp, blue dress and spoke with the kind of ease that made you forget how long you'd been holding your drink. She was working PR for a nonprofit, handling donors, press, logistics. I remember thinking how calm she seemed in the middle of a crowded room full of loud men and rich strangers. We started talking, and before I knew it, she was telling me about her dreams, opening a retreat center for women in need, living outside the city, building something that mattered. I didn't say it then, but her voice reminded me of home. Bini. The time we got married, I had already re-enlisted. The Navy had been my constant since I was 19. My father served in Korea, my grandfather in World War II. It wasn't just tradition, it was structure, purpose. Samantha said she respected that, even if she didn't fully understand it. Her family was different. Her father ran a logistics firm in Portland. Her brother was a CPA. Clean hands, clean suits, straight lives. I was the outlier with sand in my boots and scars I didn't talk about. We bought the farm 3 years into the marriage. It had belonged to my father, and when he passed, it came to me. 70 acres of quiet fields and pine woods, a weather-beaten barn, and a wraparound porch that groaned under your feet. Samantha didn't love it at first. Too far from downtown, too much work, but she warmed to the idea. Said it felt honest. We renovated the place together during one of my longest leaves. Weekends were spent fixing gutters, sanding old wood floors, painting over history without erasing it. She started talking about that retreat again, yoga, journaling, horses for therapy. I said maybe one day. Because of the VA loan, only my name was on the mortgage, but I added hers to the deed when we got married. It felt like the right thing to do. That's what marriage is, right? Shared ownership, shared risk. I never imagined the person I shared it with would someday weaponize that trust against me. In between deployments, life blurred. I'd come home. She'd greet me with half-warm hugs and forced smiles. We'd have dinner. We'd talk. But it always felt like she was somewhere else. I used to think it was just the rhythm of our life, her settling into independence while I adjusted to civilian air. But I was wrong. Looking back now, I see the small ways she began to detach. Fewer calls when I was gone, less interest in what I was doing, growing irritation when I asked about her new friends or her schedule. Once I brought up the idea of re-enlisting again, another 4 years. She stared at her plate and said, "I didn't sign up to be a part-time wife." It stung. But I understood. Deployments are hard. Long silences are hard. Watching the seasons change without the person you love beside you is hard. Still, I believed we could weather it. That's what you do in a marriage. You hold the line. I began to notice that she was more animated around other people, especially around a man named Ryan, a local event coordinator she'd met through her nonprofit work. At the time, I didn't think anything of it. I'd even shaken his hand, once at a charity auction. He seemed polite, harmless. Samantha said he helped her secure venues and donors. I took her word for it. I was exhausted mostly. Grateful she had something to occupy her time while I was gone. There were good days too. Laughing over breakfast, dancing in the kitchen to old records. I don't want to pretend it was all shadows and distance. There was still affection. Still, history. But I also knew, even then, that something had begun to change in her eyes. The way she looked at me was different. Like she was rehearsing a goodbye she didn't know how to say. I never expected her to wait forever. I only hoped she'd be honest when she couldn't anymore. But some people don't leave quietly. Some leave in pieces. Others leave with everything that was never really theirs to take. 2 weeks after that email, I was finishing my shift at the mobile clinic when a bank notification buzzed on my phone. At first, I didn't react. I assumed it was another routine update. But the amount stopped me cold. $62,400, gone, transferred out of our joint account. That was almost everything we had left. My hands didn't shake. I just stared at the screen, watching my own life vanish line by line. A few minutes later, another notification, this time from the savings account. The balance had dropped to near zero. I scrolled through the transaction history. The withdrawals had started slowly, small, unnoticeable. Then a few weeks after I deployed, they ballooned. I hadn't noticed because I was focused on my mission and because I still wanted to believe that Samantha was just struggling, not stealing. That illusion ended with a single image. Late that night, I logged into the real estate site where our farm had been listed 3 years ago when we considered refinancing. A new listing had just gone live. My stomach dropped. There it was. Motivated divorce sale, spacious rural retreat. Ideal for renovation or development. Priced to move quickly. I recognized the photos. Samantha must have used the shots we had taken back then, along with a few new ones. Only now there was a man in them. Ryan, standing on my porch, casually holding a coffee mug like he owned the place. I stared at that picture for a long time. My own farm reduced to a product, staged by a stranger wearing my life like a costume. I took a screenshot and emailed it to Matthew, my cousin who practiced real estate law in Oregon. I didn't explain much, just asked him to call me as soon as he could. He got back to me the next day. "Dan, I've seen cases like this," he said, voice low, careful. "But I need to see the deed. And I need to know if there's been any refinancing since the original loan." That's when I remembered a casual comment Samantha had made a few months back, something about looking into equity options for the farm. I brushed it off at the time. We didn't need the money. Or so I thought. Matthew started digging. He called in a favor from a title officer he knew. 3 days later, he called, me back sounding different, tighter, clipped. "Dan, someone filed a refinance on the farm 2 months ago. There's a new loan attached, $330,000. I was silent. Then he said, "The signature on the paperwork? It's supposed to be yours." My heart didn't race. It just stopped. "I need to see the documents," I said. He sent them within the hour. I opened the PDF, under the dull yellow light of a military cot. It was my name, but not my hand. The signature was close. Someone had practiced. But the slant was wrong and the middle initial was missing. Samantha had either done it herself or asked someone to do it for her. Either way, it was forgery. A felony. My name. My farm. My life. Signed away without my knowledge. There was a notary stamp on the document, too. A man named Thomas Blake. I Googled him. Licensed in Washington. Turns out he was Ryan's cousin. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was a coordinated move. A play. I began to wonder how long it had been. In motion. Was this why she encouraged the renovations? Why she pushed for her name on the deed? Was the retreat center ever real? Or was that part of the plan from the beginning? The next day, Matthew called again. I found something else, he said. There's a pending sale agreement. They've already entered escrow. She's trying to sell the property, Dan. The closing date is 3 weeks away. My mouth went dry. She can't do that without me, I said. She can if they believe you signed the documents. And if she tells the buyer you're unreachable, overseas they might not even question it. My mind went silent, not panicked, focused. This wasn't a mistake, this was a calculated move. Piece by piece, Samantha had been engineering my removal from my own life. First emotionally, then financially, and now, physically. She was trying to erase me from the farm, from the land my father had left me, from the only place that had ever truly felt like home. I filed for emergency leave that night. I didn't tell Samantha. I didn't tell anyone outside of Matthew. If she thought I was too far away to stop her, I would use that distance as cover. Let her think she was safe. Let her keep thinking she was in control, because if war had taught me anything, it was that you never move until you know exactly where to strike, and when you do, you don't miss. By the time I landed back on American soil, I'd memorized every detail of the forged refinance documents. I didn't go home. I didn't even drive past the farm. Instead, I checked into a modest Motel 2, towns over under a fake name, turned off my phone's GPS and activated a secondary line I kept for emergencies. Matthew picked me up from the airport and drove straight to a quiet diner off the highway. He slid a manila folder across the table, full of bank records, signature comparisons, the notary license of Thomas Blake, and one photo I hadn't seen yet. Ryan and Samantha, taken at an outdoor fundraiser just 3 weeks prior. She had her hand on his chest. He was smiling like he'd already won. What do you want to do, Dan? Matthew asked. Because this isn't just a messy divorce. This looks like fraud. I stared down at the folder. I want to know how deep this goes, I said quietly. And I want everything that's mine back. The next morning, we started with the bank that had approved the refinance. I walked in wearing my uniform, pressed, clean, formal. My military ID clipped to the breast pocket. The loan officer, a younger man named Kevin, looked up nervously as I approached. I asked to see the documents related to the refinance. At first he hesitated, then checked my ID against the file. His eyes widened as I pulled out the real signature from my driver's license and laid it next to the forged one. This isn't the same, he said under his breath. The middle initial is wrong and the loop's backwards. I nodded. I never signed any of it, and I never authorized anyone to act on my behalf. The room went cold. Kevin called in a manager. I stayed calm, polite, direct. I'm not here to sue your bank, I said. I'm here to stop the sale of stolen property before it goes any further. If this goes public, it'll be about your security process, not just a domestic dispute. That got their attention. Within the hour, they agreed to flag the account, freeze the funds, and launch an internal fraud review. But Matthew wasn't finished. He had filed a formal complaint with the county registrar's office and delivered copies of the forged documents to local law enforcement. We also submitted an affidavit to challenge the escrow process, citing identity theft. Still, I knew that might not be enough. Samantha had set this in motion carefully. She knew how to work the edges of legality, how to speak in half-truths, how to frame herself as the one left behind. That's when Matthew made a call to an old classmate of his, Agent Ramirez, now with the FBI's white-collar crime division. At first, Ramirez was cautious. But once he saw the scale of the financial transfers, the real estate documents, and the fact that I was active military, his tone shifted. "This isn't just a forged signature," he said. "This fits a pattern we've seen before. Scammers targeting military families during deployment. You might not be the only one." My stomach turned. "Are you saying Ryan's done this before?" Ramirez nodded. "He's been mentioned in at least 2 other investigations. Nothing stuck yet. No one pushed far enough. But your case might tie it all together." We met again that evening. Ramirez brought a laptop with surveillance data from one of Ryan's past entanglements. A woman whose deployed husband had come home to find her house sold and emptied. Ryan's name had shown up in the wire transfers, under a Shell LLC. Same as the one involved in my farm's pending sale. Different state, same playbook. "This isn't a one-time betrayal," Ramirez said. "It's a business model." Suddenly, this wasn't just personal. It was systemic, calculated, cold. I felt something settle in me, not anger, not grief, but focus. They'd underestimated me. They'd thought I'd stay in the jungle, too far away, too burdened to fight. But I was never built to run. I'd survived things that would break most people. And now, I had a reason to fight. Not just for my land, not even for my dignity, but because other families, other men like me, had been blindsided and left with nothing. We dug deeper. Ramirez subpoenaed Ryan's financials. Turns out he wasn't just helping Samantha. He'd done similar renovation partnerships with 2 other women, both military spouses, both recently divorced. In each case, the homes had sold below market value and disappeared into networks of LLCs that traced back to him. Even worse, we found a link between Ryan and Daniel Spencer, the real estate agent handling my farm's listing. Publicly, Spencer seemed clean, but his private email and wire history told another story. He and Ryan had closed at least 3 sales together in the past 2 years. Fast, quiet, cash-heavy deals. The same script every time. Charm the wife, fake the paperwork, flip the house. My stomach clenched. Samantha hadn't just betrayed me. She'd joined a predator. Whether she knew the full scope or not, I couldn't say. But what I could do, what I had to do, was finish what they started. Not with threats, not with noise, but with proof. That night, Matthew and I drafted a full timeline. We uploaded every piece of evidence to a secure drive and gave Ramirez full access. Then I went back to the motel and sat in silence, staring at the ceiling. They thought I'd been erased, but I was just getting started. 3 days later, just after dawn, I sat in my truck parked down the road from my own farm. I hadn't been there since before the deployment. From a distance, it looked the same. The gravel path leading up the long driveway. The front porch I'd rebuilt with my own hands during leave 2 years ago. The cedar fence Samantha once said made the place look too rustic. The barn that still leaned a little to the left, it looked quiet, peaceful, as if nothing had changed. But everything had. The farm was set to close in 8 days. The buyer, a shell company linked to Ryan, was preparing the final wire. The title agency was waiting for a few last confirmations, and then it would be gone. My father's legacy, the land that had grounded me, the only thing I had left that hadn't been touched by war, and now they were about to sell it for a profit, built on a forged signature and a stolen identity. I wasn't going to let that happen. That afternoon, Ramirez and his team met me and Matthew at a small rented office space near town. We reviewed the final plan. I had reactivated the old security system I'd installed 2 years ago during the renovation, complete with cloud backups. Samantha had probably forgotten it even existed. I'd replaced the batteries remotely, rerouted the uploads, and now had full access to every camera, including 2 hidden ones inside the barn and the mudroom. What she didn't know was that I'd also activated the microphone feed. We didn't need confrontation. We needed confirmation. A confession if we could get one. But above all, we needed undeniable proof that this wasn't just a bad breakup. It was a calculated, fraudulent conspiracy. At 10:17 a.m. on a Thursday, a car pulled into the driveway. It had the logo of a real estate agency on the side, Spencer and Co. Properties. Daniel Spencer himself stepped out holding a tablet and a clipboard. A few seconds later, Ryan emerged from the side of the house wearing sunglasses and holding a coffee mug. Mine. I recognized the chipped handle and faded Navy insignia. My hand clenched involuntarily, but I said nothing. The two men shook hands in the driveway. Listing should go live by tomorrow, Spencer said, flipping open his tablet. We've got interest from 2 buyers already. Cash offers. Fast close. Ryan smirked. Perfect, the husband's still in the Philippines, won't be back until late next month. He signed everything before he left. Spencer didn't blink. And the signature? Ryan shrugged. Taken care of, you worry too much. Spencer laughed. I've seen deals fall apart for less. Military types, they always make noise when they find out. Ryan sipped the coffee. Let him make noise. By the time he gets back, we'll be long gone. I watched all of this from the laptop in Ramirez's unmarked SUV. Matthew sat next to me, lips pressed tight. Ramirez didn't say a word. He just recorded everything. Inside the house, Samantha walked into the kitchen. She looked tired, hollow even. She greeted Spencer with forced enthusiasm and asked about closing dates. Ryan leaned on the counter, like he owned the place, gesturing toward the cabinets I had installed myself. He redid all this, he said. Guy was obsessed with quality, worked with his hands a lot. Shame, really? Samantha laughed. It was light, nervous. She didn't add anything. The feed cut to the mudroom. Spencer turned to her. So we're clear, right? Once we get the offer, we don't need anything else from Daniel? Samantha paused. No, I have power of attorney. At least it'll pass. No one's asked questions yet. That was the line, the one we needed. She didn't realize the power of attorney was forged, illegally notarized, submitted without my consent. And now she had just admitted to it on tape. Ramirez gave the signal. Within minutes, 2 black vehicles pulled up to the house. Agents moved quickly, efficiently. Spencer barely had time to set his tablet down before he was in handcuffs. Ryan froze, his smirk fading as 2 officers escorted him outside. Samantha stood at the threshold of the kitchen, her hands trembling. What's going on? She asked. What is this? I stepped out of the vehicle and walked toward the house. For a moment, she didn't recognize me. Then her eyes locked, onto mine, and widened. Daniel, she said, almost like a gasp. You're supposed to be gone? I finished for her. She looked around. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Ryan said you'd signed. He said it was okay. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Ramirez stepped forward. Samantha Brooks, we need to speak with you about your involvement in a financial fraud investigation involving forged documents, wire fraud, and property theft. She turned to me. Dan, please, we can fix this. I held her gaze, but I didn't reach for her hand. You already tried to fix it. With my name. With my father's land. With lies. Later that day, Ramirez told us that this bust opened the door to multiple related cases in 3 different states. Ryan and Spencer had been working together for years, targeting vulnerable spouses, especially military families. I wasn't the first, but I was finally the one who'd stopped it. Samantha agreed to cooperate in exchange for leniency. She signed a full confession, surrendering all rights to the farm, to the stolen funds, and to my pension. She wouldn't face jail time. Ramirez said it wasn't worth the trial, but her public admission would follow her for the rest of her life. I stood on my porch that night, watching the last agents pack up their evidence boxes. The sun was setting over the hills, casting long shadows across the property. It felt like the end of a battle, not loud, not glorious, just clean, necessary. And as I looked out at the fields my father once walked, I felt something I hadn't in weeks. Stillness, not because everything was okay, but because justice, even quiet justice, had finally come home. The weeks that followed felt like a slow exhale after years of holding my breath. The storm had passed, but the damage remained. quiet, invisible, sitting in the bones like old injuries that ache when the weather turns. The investigation officially moved into the federal system. Ryan and Spencer were both indicted on multiple counts: conspiracy to commit wire fraud, identity theft, real estate fraud, and forgery. When faced with the full scope of evidence, emails, audio recordings, financial transfers, notarized forgeries, they didn't even try to deny it. Both men took plea deals. Ryan went first. He admitted to targeting at least 4 military families over a 3-year period, all during active deployments. Spencer wasn't far behind. He confessed to using his license and agency as a front for fast cash real estate flips, helping siphon value from distressed marriages, always with someone else's signature at the bottom of the deal. Samantha's role was trickier. Her lawyer painted her as misled, manipulated, a woman caught in something larger than she realized. And maybe there was truth in that. Or maybe it was just another way of saying she was willing to look away as long as she benefited. I'll never know which version is real, and by then, I'd stopped trying to untangle it. What mattered was this. She signed a sworn statement admitting to forgery, gave up all legal claims to the farm, the rental property, and any access to my pension. The state dropped criminal charges in exchange for her full cooperation with the federal investigation. I didn't contest it. I didn't want to see her behind bars. I wanted distance. I wanted quiet. I wanted my name to be my own again. The house was mine once more, but it felt haunted by what had happened, by what almost had. I walked from room to room and saw what was missing. Not furniture, not photographs, but trust. That invisible thing you build between two people. Piece by piece until one day it either becomes a home or it becomes a weapon. I knew I couldn't live there anymore. I sold the rental house first. Then, a few months later, after the final court documents came through, I listed the farm. I didn't list it as a motivated sale. I didn't call it a rural investment opportunity. I listed it honestly. Family farm, held with pride, ready for a new chapter. It sold to a young couple who wanted to raise their children in wide open spaces. The husband was a firefighter, the wife a nurse. I gave them a discount on the closing price. Not out of pity, out of hope that maybe something good could finally grow from the wreckage. With the sale complete, I packed everything into a U-Haul and drove north. I found a cabin outside Missoula, Montana. 2 bedrooms, 10 acres, a creek running along the back, and no one within shouting distance. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. Entirely mine. Bought in cash. Titled in my name alone. I took early. Retirement from the Navy. 20 years, 2 wars, more countries than I can count. Enough. I'd given all I could. I started doing odd jobs for people in the nearby town. Small repairs, carpentry, seasonal maintenance. Work that kept my hands busy, my mind steady. I adopted a German Shepherd from a local shelter. Named him Scout. He follows me everywhere. Listens better than most people ever did. At night we sit on the porch and watch the wind move through the pine trees. The silence is loud sometimes, but it's clean. It doesn't lie to me. It doesn't ask me to forget. One morning I got a letter forwarded from my old P.O. box. It was from a woman in Fort Worth, Texas. Her husband was in the Army, currently deployed. She wrote that she'd been approached by a business consultant about a quick refinance while her husband was overseas. Something didn't sit right with her, and after Googling the name, she came across a news article about the fraud case involving me, Ryan, and Spencer. The FBI had given her my name. She wrote, "You don't know me, but your story stopped me from signing. You saved our home. Thank you." I read the letter twice, then pinned it on the wall of my workshop. Sometimes when I'm sanding wood or fixing a window frame, I glance at it and remember that not all scars stay hidden. Some become warnings, others anchors. I don't think about Samantha much anymore. Matthew told me she moved back to Oregon. She's working part-time for a community health group. Ryan is serving a 7-year sentence. Spencer got 10. I don't know if they'll ever understand what they took from the people they targeted, but that's not my burden to carry. All I know is this. They tried to erase me, quietly and efficiently. But I came back, and I rebuilt. Not the same life, but one that's honest. One that can't be signed away. 1 year after the day I read that email in the Philippines, I found myself standing at the edge of the creek behind my cabin, Scout, by my side, watching the water move around the stones like it always had. I'd come to this place hoping for peace, but what I found was something better: clarity. I had spent so many years in motion, deployed, scheduled, ordered by duty, never pausing long enough to ask if I was building a life or just surviving one. Now, with the noise behind me, I could finally hear my own thoughts. The betrayal, as brutal as it was, had become a kind of release, a dark blessing. It forced me to confront not just what was taken from me, but what I'd been giving away long before it ever happened. Looking back, I see now that I ignored the signs not because I was blind, but because I loved the version of Samantha that no longer existed. The version who stood by me in dress blues, who dreamed out loud with me on the porch, who laughed in the kitchen while burning eggs on Sunday mornings. I stayed loyal to the ghost of her, long after she'd already turned away. And that's what made the silence hurt so much. It wasn't just about money or property, it was about memory. About realizing that love can die long before anyone says the words. But here on this land, I built something new. Simple things. A greenhouse. A workshop. A bench facing west for sunsets. I started volunteering with a local veterans group. Mentoring. Younger guys returning from deployment, helping them figure out how to build something solid out of what's left. They remind me of myself 20 years ago. Lost, but willing. I received a second letter, a few weeks after the first. This time, from a man, an Air Force mechanic stationed overseas. His wife had been contacted by the same real estate agency used in my case. Because of the FBI's investigation, the agency was now under scrutiny. The sale never happened. He wrote, "I owe you a beer, hell, maybe a farm. You didn't just save your home, you helped protect mine. I don't save those letters because I need praise. I save them because they remind me that sometimes when you fight quietly, when you move deliberately and refuse to break, you do more than defend what's yours. You protect people you'll never even meet. The world doesn't reward silence, but it respects resolve. And in that, I found something like justice. Not the loud cinematic kind, but the kind that stays, the kind that holds. The kind you can build a life on. What happened to me could have happened to anyone. That's the part most people don't understand. Betrayal doesn't always come with shouting or slammed doors. Sometimes, it arrives quietly under the cover of routine, a changed password, a delayed reply, a signature that isn't yours but says your name. The truth is, most people are never taught how to defend their life outside of a battlefield or courtroom. But this experience taught me something deeper than survival. You don't need to fight loud to fight well. You need awareness, you need preparation, and most of all, you need to know when silence becomes strength. In the end, it wasn't revenge that gave me closure. It was clarity. The clarity to see that resilience isn't built during peace. It's shaped in the moment everything starts to fall apart. The clarity to realize that love, trust, and identity aren't things we inherit or assume. They are things we protect, deliberately, wisely, and sometimes alone. I shared this story not to expose the past, but to offer something to those who might be walking a similar path. If you've been betrayed, blindsided, or left behind, know this. Your power lies in what you choose to do next. Whether it's rebuilding, protecting what's yours, or simply learning how to walk forward without looking back, you are not alone. If this story meant something to you, leave a comment below. Let's talk about resilience, not just heartbreak. And if someone you know needs to hear this, share it. Because sometimes what we survive can become the very thing that saves someone else.